To the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Nuruddin Dahamain, the Head of the Department, Dr. Ben Ali, the Chair of this event, Dr. Chlef Faiza, the organizer, Ms. Somia Hamadi, fellow literature educators and enthusiasts, Assalamu alaikum, a pleasant morning to all of you. Allow me first to thank the Hassiba Ben Bouali University of Chlef for inviting me to this International Study Day and to the land of Albert Camus, albeit virtually. From his novel The Plague, I better understood and appreciated life despite this pandemic. And to pay it forward, I hope to share with you today what I have learned from being a literature teacher for 17 years in my country, the Philippines, and that through this sharing, we could find a common ground, even if I am 11,530 kilometers away from you. Literature teaching in the 20th century predominantly used canonical texts from the Western world, and they became the teacher's comfort zone. Teachers were contented exploring the world within the text and sharing their interpretations of the texts through their lenses, while the students would attentively listen and take notes to be ready for the next dreaded English exam. Learning literature was confined within the four walls of the classroom, mastering all the figures of speech, the plot elements, and lines from Shakespeare's sonnets and plays. When we look back at how we were taught literature and how we used to teach literature, and we look at our students now, immersed in their tablets or cell phones instead of dusty books from the library, do you feel A, nostalgia, or B, envy for your students and say, how lucky these students are? Can you please type in the chat box? Is it A or B? Personally, I would like to assume the perspective of Janus, the Roman god of beginnings and endings. He is depicted having two faces, one looking back and the other looking ahead. Just like him, I would like to remember the essentials of literature teaching from the past and carry them with me as I move forward and adapt to the changes in literature pedagogy in the 21st century. I personally advocate for a literature education that justifies the rightful place of literature and literatures in the curriculum, analyzes literary texts through the student's critical lens, navigates the world beyond the text, upgrades literature activities through innovative pedagogy, and sustains love and appreciation for literature. First, I choose to justify the place of literature and literatures in our curriculum, even if the world tells us that science and technology and not the humanities drive a nation's progress. While mastering the English grammar to be able to read and write and speak fluently is very important now more than ever, let us continue to see literature not as mere stylistic combinations of words on a page, but as our living reality, a mirror of our humanity and society. And from this mirror, we make decisions and act guided by the philosophies and values that we learned from these masterpieces. More specifically, let's also find a place for non native English, emerging, and mainstream literatures in our classes. While I recognize the importance of tackling the timeless works of Geoffrey Chaucer, Jane Austen, and F. Scott Fitzgerald in literature classes, how about giving more space for the works of Asha Jabar from Algeria, from F. H. Batacan from the Philippines, from M. Nurbis Philippe from Trinidad and Tobago, and David Dean from Guyana, and be proud of our unique way of writing about our reality and sentiments in the English that we know and eventually own. How about recognizing fan fiction in Wattpad and chick lit as legitimate literature, worthy of our attention and scholarly examination? Let us students judge themselves whether Lauren Weisenberg, Emma McLaughlin, Nicola Cross, and Elizabeth Ashton deserve a place in the pantheon of literature, and we will have a better understanding of what literature now means for the new generation. While it is important that literature educators are expected to be many steps ahead of their students in terms of literary competence, they must also be ready to let go of their own interpretations, biases, and perspectives, and give more opportunities for students to analyze a text using a critical lens on their own. But before this can happen, we must teach our students to go back to the basics of reading horizontally instead of vertically in their tablets and phones, for them to closely read between the lines and make sound interpretations later. The literature teacher must let students cite evidence from the text and not just draw from common sense or personal experience. Once students are proficient in making inferences and analyzing patterns from the text, the next thing would be to challenge students to question the author's meaning or purpose, characters' motives, text's faithfulness to reality, point out in betweens, inconsistencies, and ambiguities. Like, for example, you can ask the questions: why did the author choose this particular character to represent the proletariat class? Does the text really mirror the reality of this particular place or setting? Why did the character choose to die at the end of the novel if he wants to fight against colonialism? Can you say that the character is anti-women based on on his or her actions and decisions in the story? Justify your answer. This way, we are teaching the students to look at literature under a microscope, as it is in closer scrutiny of details that we appreciate the wholeness of the art. However, a deeper appreciation for literature can be fostered more if we allow our students to use a kaleidoscope and a telescope. Through a kaleidoscopic view, students would be able to see how literature reflects their multiple and changing identities and roles as an individual, as a family, or a community member, as a citizen of our country and of this world, and the many other hats and masks that we wear. On the other hand, through a telescope, they navigate how people's realities across cultures or even imagined worlds are paradoxically the same and different at the same time. For example, let them compare the Exodus in Israel versus the Exodus in Eritrea in these poems from Marina Boroditskaya from Russia and Ribka Sebatu from Eritrea. Students then learn to embrace diversity and respect and empathy for others follow. While still the best way to teach literature is for the teachers to facilitate meaningful and lively discussions in class, we cannot deny the importance of upgrading our pedagogy through the use of technology to make literature more accessible and closer to the hearts of the students. There is a myriad of tools and file sharing sites that students can use to collaboratively create literary pieces. Internet based communication services can be used for us to connect students to famous writers or to other students abroad and get them to discuss each other's national literature or culture. Social media and blog sites are avenues for free sharing of creative works to the world. Your Twiterature can be famous in just a few minutes. Virtual bulletin boards are excellent freedom walls where students can share insights about what they have just read and how they personally connect with the text. Of course, the teacher must ensure that these walls are safe spaces for self expression, where they do not worry about whether their interpretation of literature is right or wrong. However, let me emphasize that innovation does not always require devices and machines. Innovation starts with revolutionizing the way we think about literature and about teaching, and allowing students' creativity to explore uncharted territories and discover a new self in the process. Lastly, all the things I mentioned earlier would be for naught if teachers will not motivate students to sustain their love for literature beyond their literature classes. Long term appreciation for this art starts with a deep understanding of the intricate, deliberate, and unique way the teachers, the writers crafted their pieces to suit their intention. Take, for example, you can ask students what makes this comic book an art? What makes it an ideal representative of its genre, right? It is through our close reading, dynamic discussions, and creative performance tasks, and not in difficult English and literature exams, that they truly feel that literature is life, and that they can use their comprehension, inferencing, and analytical skills, as well as their creativity, when they face more complicated tasks as an adult and professional later. When they get older, they may not be reading poetry or fiction much anymore, but they will surely read people, situations, and challenges, and use pieces of information as clues. Then they will create the best solutions to problems and communicate them effectively to others. Thanks to the literary competence that the students developed in your liberating literature classes. To end, Janus, as also the god of gates and doorways, is commonly depicted holding a huge key. Just like him, we, 21st century literature teachers, are we now ready to open more doors for our students? I hope the rest of the International Study Day would help you answer this question. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the rest of this conference. Saha. Now, at this point, I'd like to encourage you to join the upcoming activities of Literature Educators Association of the Philippines, and we hope to see you there in our international conference. Thank you so much again for inviting me. Have a great day.